Bill Clinton ran his political campaign on the idea of being a new Democrat. So, what he meant by that was he was a moderate Democrat, somebody who had more of a center left, but not entirely center left ideology. Coming from Arkansas, he understood Southern values. Being a Democrat, he also understood Northern values. So oftentimes, Bill Clinton would portray himself as being a little bit red and a little bit blue. And he walked that fine line for the majority of his presidency. Bill Clinton, this young, well spoken, attractive man from Arkansas, had a way of appealing to people that really garnered attention. And as he took the White House, he began to embark on several different things, not without a few missteps and miscues on the very beginning. Um, Bill Clinton wanted to do something about the ban on homosexuals in the military. Okay, up until the 90s, it was basically homosexuals were not allowed to serve in the military. So Bill Clinton tried to do something about it, but his solution was a don't ask, don't tell policy. Basically, recruiters were not able to ask if a recruit was homosexual, and military commanders and platoon leaders or anything else of the sort were not allowed to ask. And the service person themselves were not allowed to tell. If you're gay, don't tell. So this don't ask, don't tell policy was kind of a way to kind of circumvent. Now, if you ask me, um, I don't care what you look like or what you are or anything else of the sort. I don't care if you're gay, straight, white, black, Christian, Muslim, whatever you are. I don't care. If you'll pick up a rifle and vow to defend our country, come on down. I don't care. Okay? And that sort of growing sentiment kind of added to the idea that don't ask, don't tell wasn't enough. But it wasn't until 20 years later that something would finally be done about that. Otherwise, though, Hillary Clinton kind of stepped into some other troubles when his wife Hillary, who had owned various different properties in Arkansas back in the early 80s, were accused of financial improprieties with their Whitewater Development Company. Um, they were accused of various aspects of fraud and cooking the books, if you will, for their various different property ownership company. And it added a speculation that their attorney, in the midst of all this growing sense of steam, surprisingly committed suicide. He suicided himself. So, this whole mantra that you see of Hillary Clinton today, with Jeffrey Epstein, um, all kinds of different things going on. Supposedly, opponents of Hillary Clinton mysteriously find themselves to have committed suicide. So it's this whole internet meme and mantra that, oh, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Um, Jeffrey Epstein, the noted pedophile, was actually a very good friend of the Clintons. He was also a good friend of Donald Trump. Um, he was arrested for his actions, and then he was found in his cell after hanging himself. Why wasn't there more people paying attention? And that's kind of this whole mantra. So supposedly, people who get crossways with the Clintons are going to find their way into committing suicide. So it's this popular internet mantra. I don't know one way or the other if any of that's true, but it's kind of fun to laugh about. Um, Otherwise, though, Bill Clinton wanted to kind of reverse some of the Reagan Bush era tax policies, and he wanted to increase taxes on the wealthiest Americans. And he wanted to expand the government role kind of in LBJ Great Society type form. Okay, and that met with much opposition, which we're going to talk about in a minute. One of the things he did want to do was to establish more free trade agreements, especially with our closest neighbors, Mexico and Canada. So, Bill Clinton was a huge supporter of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. which would remove various different trade barriers between the three countries that would enable more economic progress, if you will, and remove barriers that would make trade more easily available for all three of the countries, which all three would stand to benefit. That was the theory. So, in Bill Clinton's early years, NAFTA was passed to accomplish that feat. And then, of course, after the breakup of communism in Eastern Europe, the former Yugoslavia, after their communist government broke up, their country actually split up into several different countries, um, including Moldova, which is Melania Trump's home country. That used to be the former Yugoslavia. That's now just one of the republics that formed a part of what used to be Yugoslavia. Um, there was a bitter breakup, and you had various different ethnic strife, if you will, and oftentimes going down religious lines in Serbia, in various different parts of southern former Yugoslavia. There were a number of Albanian Muslims who were fighting against Serbian Christians for territorial control. So you have all these people and factions who lived in one country now fighting for resources, and they didn't get along. So the United States had Bosnia to deal with, and something would come to a head about that in a few years. All while this was going along, Republicans were nitpicking not just Bill Clinton, but also they deemed as trying to portray the Democrats as expanding the federal government, expanding the bureaucracy, and expanding the federal government's reach into everyday American people's lives. It's kind of a mantra that was left over from the Reagan years. And in 1994, as Bill Clinton was kind of weak in his first couple years, and as Congress, led by Democrats at the time, was particularly weak, 1994 midterm election, Republicans swept both chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And they did so with a strong majority. And Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, a Republican from Georgia, deemed that as being a mandate. The American people repudiated Bill Clinton and leftist Democrat policies. So, from that standpoint, Republicans began a campaign of hyperpartisanship because they deemed their numbers in their 1994 midterm election as being valid. The American public clearly supports the Republican agenda based upon the vote of 1994's midterms. And that didn't seem like a bad policy at the time because, well, the numbers did back it up. So what began once those new Republicans entered into Congress in early 1995 were a number of different battles and struggles. Bill Clinton, who had been kind of center-left, really at this time kind of harkened back on his old little bit red, little bit blue philosophy. And he moved his political ideology more towards the center. Not that he wasn't a moderate to begin, but he realized I'm a Democrat president, and the House and the Senate are both led strongly by Republicans. I need to go to the center. Okay? And he did. And the Republicans remained hyperpartisan. And even though Bill Clinton moved to the center, they would often come to budget disagreements that sometimes led to government shutdowns. And because of it, Bill Clinton remained reasonably popular, and Newt Gingrich kind of stumbled. And Democrats regained a few of their seats in 1996 election, but not enough. But otherwise, though, you did see some various different movement. Bill Clinton, even though after 1994 faced a Republican majority in Congress, still remained quite popular. And leading into the 1996 presidential election, the very first election I ever voted in when I was 19 years old, Bill Clinton ran against Bob Dole, and a senator from Kansas, and won handily. Bill Clinton, despite his missteps and despite having a Republican-controlled Congress, still remained wildly popular. And in 1996, he was pretty easily reelected, winning 379 electoral votes, and taken the country popular vote by over 8 million votes. Okay, wasn't really a battle. The problem for him was that Republicans still maintained a control of Congress. But Bill Clinton had presided over a time where by the late 1990s, the federal government was actually working on a budget surplus. Think about that. The United States, for the first time in 30 years, took in more money than we spent. That's exceptionally rare these days. Nowadays, Congress, to overcome this pandemic type situation, is going to have to pass a second round of stimulus. And today, being May the 9th, there are talks that the Senate is going to come together with other different proposals to spend upwards of $3 trillion extra dollars to stimulate money and stimulate the economy and fill people's pocketbooks with money. And I want you to think about the reason why. 70% of our gross domestic product in this country, 70% of the output comes from consumer spending, you and me. Not corporations, not even small businesses. It comes from people like you and me who go to Walmart and we spend money, or we go to Best Buy and we buy a TV, or we go to a car dealership and we buy a car. We're going to go buy a new iPhone. We're going to go buy whatever. We're going to buy, spend. We're going to spend our money at restaurants. Some of us a little too much. We're going to go buy a new pair of jeans, new pair of boots. We're going to go buy a new hat to go with your Chevy Silverado or F-150. You're going to spend money. That is 70% of our nation's gross domestic output. It's important for people to have money in their pocketbooks. So in an era where we don't have money, that's catastrophic. Okay, so we're going to have to go into a deficit even further so as to keep things afloat, because if we don't, things are going to be way worse. So it's the lesser of two evils there. But otherwise, during this presidency, there was a surplus. That further was a mark for Bill Clinton to kind of say, I produced a surplus. Okay. Also around this time, Bill Clinton had a former White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. And look, he's not the first president to have, physical relations with White House staffers. John F. Kennedy was notorious for having some. But otherwise, though, apparently Bill Clinton was having various different sexual improprieties with this young woman. And when asked about it, he denied it. And it may or may not be a huge big deal that this man is an adulterer and he cheated on his wife with a White House intern or whatnot. His detractors harped on the idea that when asked about it, he lied about it. And then later on, under a grand jury indictment, he basically said, okay, yeah, I did it. So the whole year of 1998 was Monica Lewinsky's year, and the blue dress and cigars and all kinds of stuff. You can read up about it. It's pretty interesting. That was an interesting time to be alive. It's like, okay, wow. Apparently he lied about it, and because he lied about it, he was accused of obstruction of justice and lying under oath. So an impeachment trial would actually begin. Kenneth Starr would actually be one of the lead prosecutors trying to get Bill Clinton impeached. And ultimately, the impeachment movement wasn't successful. And Bill Clinton's popularity took a little bit of a hit leading on to the last couple of years of his presidency. But after he was acquitted, even though the Starr report was pretty damning and there are all kinds of different things about it, he had a pretty good approval rating. Okay? May not be the most just guy, and he had been accused in years past of sexual harassment by former Arkansas employees like Paula Jones and Jennifer Flowers. And Bill Clinton has a reputation for being um, sexually improper, and he'd been accused of sexual harassment before. And those cases had gone by the wayside, but he had kind of developed this reputation for which. But some other things that came up during Bill Clinton's presidency that coincided with his presidency was the emergence of technology. The internet, for example. Um, Dial-up internet. That began really in the mid 1990s, being able to dial in from your desktop and call and have your 14.4 or hopefully a 28.8 modem go off, and now you're able to go on to Netscape and take 5 minutes for your page to load, but you'd have access to the internet. Nowadays, you hop on your phone. You can call it an airstrike on this thing. You have access. This phone right here is more powerful than all the original computers put together by a factor of 1,000. It's ridiculous what this phone can do. But back then, you would dial into the internet, and it created this internet surge. Now people are logging in and they're able to send each other emails. You don't have to handwrite a letter and put it in a stamp, lick the envelope, and send it off. Now you can fire off an email. Heck, soon you might be able to pay your bills online. Imagine that. Okay? So, because of it, you have a rising economic output. You have a rising stock market, a technology sector that's going to skyrocket. Tech stocks were really big. The internet became more mainstream. Nowadays, for those of you who have never grown up without the internet, you'll never know what life was like before it. You'll never know what it was like to dial a rotary phone. Hope you don't have a bunch of 9s and 8s like I did in my phone number when I was a kid. Oh, 7877. Oh, how bad do I want to call this guy? All right. You'll never know what it's like to try and record off the radio with a cassette tape your favorite song. Okay, now you just hop on to Spotify and there it is, you know. Okay. Otherwise, though, Bill Clinton's presidency was marked with a number of different controversies. It was marked with a number of other different things. We would become further involved in Yugoslavia when Bosnian Arabs, or Muslims rather, had strife with Serbians over territory in Kosovo in the late 90s. And eventually, Bill Clinton approved some bombing campaigns that would quiet the Serbs and eventually them to cease fire, and eventually there would be an agreement. Okay? Bill Clinton's presidency was marked with the idea of hyper-partisanship, having to come to the middle, accusations of sexual harassment and impropriety, lying about it, possible impeachment, and the internet. So Bill Clinton, all through this, his wife, Hillary, remained our first lady, and we'll talk about her later on. But otherwise, though, interesting time, the 1990s.